You're familiar with comedy tropes, right? You've encountered the concept of the crackhead before. You know, someone who's so desperate to get their fix that they'll do all sorts of humiliating, self-degrading things to get a hold of one more rock. Hi, folks. It's your old pal King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. Nerds, for the last decade plus, you can kind of maybe say the dawn of the Marvel era, perhaps, have been being abused and commodified and punished whenever they step out of line. And up to a certain point, nerd communities have bowled over because the nature of how they're being punished is by playing on their own good natures and their own good intentions, by accusing them of being something bad to get them to conform. You can see a good example of it right now with all the stuff going on with Hogwarts Legacy. God forbid you liked some stupid, terrible children's books when you were a kid and you like the movies and you want to play a video game. No, you're causing real life harm to real life people. Where is D&D going to be in another year and a half? What are things really going to be like after OneD&D premieres and we get the virtual tabletop? Are we going to have something where you have a bunch of online activists who've been stirred up over accusations of racism and bigotry in the old fan community? Are they going to be making blacklists of anyone who's been streaming older versions of D&D on Twitch? If you refuse to buy into the VTT and get your premium access plan for $30 a month, are you going to be accused of causing real life harm to people out there? Are you taking up a space that someone else could have? Are you going to be forced to have to abase yourself, humiliate yourself? Are you going to have to confess things about your sexual activities to try to buy your way in? So you can make a point about how, hey, I slept with that trans woman that one time. I'm not a straight white male, right? Just so you can gain access and not be accused of being the bad thing. I think it's kind of funny that of all the nerd subgenres, it's been role-playing game nerds that have actually given the most amount of pushback up to this point, with corporate entities accusing us of being various things, in large part because role-playing game nerds, by and large, are not those things. To be really bluntly honest, a lot of us are kind of damaged people, and there's reasons probably why other more mainstream type of nerds still scoff at people who play Dungeons and Dragons, and why the people at the company do view us as problematic know-it-all customers who think too highly of their rights and all that kind of stuff, and won't go quietly into that night. And so a lot of what's been going on lately with a certain someone going around during interviews, I feel, is probably just kind of laying groundwork so that later it can all be cited, a big setup, so that when the game comes out, when OneD&D 6th edition, the virtual version, the digital version of Dungeons and Dragons finally premieres, they'll have created a whole framing device to make it out that if you want to continue to play the old D&D, what you're doing is playing the racist D&D, and you're potentially causing harm, young man, to real people. And you don't want to be causing harm to people with your bigoted racism for wanting to play Forgotten Realms and the older version of Forgotten Realms that has a fetishized Asian setting in it in the form of character. You don't want to do that. I guess we should just be lucky that they're not yet trying to make it out that older versions of D&D are transphobic. Otherwise, we would be getting the full Hogwarts right now. But will this fan community knuckle under the more this goes on? our society is not really geared for people to be able to mount a defense of themselves when accused of certain things. It's real easy to accuse people of those things, but they're not exactly, given a lot of space to, like, explain exactly what they meant by whatever it was they said. And then you find yourself in this weird timeline where 6 years later, Roseanne's on Fox News. What? Remember when Roseanne Barr was an outspoken Green Party member? Oh, but, she made a Planet of the Apes joke on Twitter, and bam, been chased entirely out of her own positions to a point where, like, the only place she has to go is with people who would have been natural bedfellows for her in the first place. I don't know, the long-term ramifications of all this kind of stuff, especially with, what you can't, obviously, if you want to use the current modern definitions of things that have been purposely twisted around to make sure that certain people are always in the right and other people are always in the wrong, on that basis of, if racism is privilege plus power, then, well, I guess, yeah, all your white people playing Dungeons and Dragons are by default racist, and there's nothing they can ever do about that. There's going to be a point where people realize if there's nothing they can ever do about that, then why are they bending over backwards? But hopefully things won't come to that point, because, as I said, gamers are actually good people. It's in part why there is this kind of this air of incredulity. Star Wars fans were quick to yeah, fuck those other Star Wars fans, and turn on each other. Gamers are a slower ship to turn. But we have a whole year plus until this new version of D&D comes out, and of them basically having time to set the stage in the media, to portray things however they want, and get their rabid loyalists on page as to, the real nature of the real threat. It's not that people playing old D&D might detract from people wanting to play their new version of D&D when they see that there's a version that they can play largely for free, unless they're the dungeon master, as opposed to, this $30 a month thing so you can talk to a computer. But if they can convince everyone that the people who are playing that older version of D&D are doing it because they have deep-seated, dark, bigoted inclinations down in their heart, and they're trying to subvert your children and turn them all into a bunch of alt-right, right-wing incels, and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. Just, I guess, food for thought. This is all just looking through the mists to try to get a glimpse of what the future could hold. One way or the other, these people are hung up on their money. In fact, it really is becoming more and more clear that this isn't just a Wizards of the Coast problem. This is Hasbro. Hasbro hired these people. Hasbro wants their money, goddammit, come hell or high water. And how dare you stand in the way, you bigot scum. So, they're using your own good nature against you. They've been doing that for quite some time. Are you going to keep putting up with it? Or are you going to be a crackhead who's willing to suck dick for a rock? I guess we'll find out next year. Until then, stay waspinated.